everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is...
Joy.
Now, as everybody knows, we are loosely a music podcast. However, we do occasionally deviate into other topics. Now, before the record started, Joy was telling me about a great food sandwich story, or she alluded to it, but she wants to tell you all about it. So, Joy, over to you.
First of all, I sent Tim a photo, which will go up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I need everyone to witness this. And this, I will not say the local restaurant because I'm not going to, it's a local restaurant to me and Tim that is near and dear to our hearts. I'm not going to put them on blast. This may have been a very new cook or a young cook or someone who's not got knowledge of food, which it kind of is concerning because they made my food, but we're not going to talk about that. So, tomorrow is my birthday. Woo!
Yay! Happy birthday!
So we have admitted to what Tim's age is. Joy is 32 tomorrow. So there's my age.
See, there we are.
Hot off the presses, everyone. We know you were all dying to know that. Anyway, so my husband and me were like, okay, well, Charlie's got some stuff going on tomorrow. We're not going to be able to celebrate. I have a weekend play with some friends in the near future where we're going on the water park. But he's like, let's have your birthday dinner tonight. I said, fine. So we ordered from said local restaurant that Tim is very familiar with. It's a big staple in our area. And it's kind of like a deli sandwich general restaurant. Would you agree, Tim? Is that how you describe it?
I mean, they do different stuff. They do like a bowl salad thing that I like. But yes, it's lots of deli sandwiches is their speciality. And
I was feeling a sandwich. I did a build your own sandwich and I had some macaroni salad with it. So my husband is not like me and he's very near and dear to his burgers. So he wanted a burger. Fine. Order what you want. Who cares, right? So... when you order a deli sandwich, and I don't know if this is a UK thing or it's an American thing, but generally think like McAllister's Deli, Panera, you always get like a pickle spear on the side. Can you testify to that, Tim?
Yeah, it's certainly a US thing. I've never experienced it in the UK, but yeah, they give you a pickle spear, which typically goes in the dustbin for me.
Okay. So I'm a pickle lover, but that's just normal. So we're waiting for our food to come out. They're especially busy. This restaurant is very popular in our area, so it's not shocking. So I was sitting out in the car. Charlie just went in to grab the food, hanging out with my dog, just chilling. And he sends me a message. And this is where I can't keep a straight face because I have not laughed this hard in years. Because I know if you've ever worked in like a restaurant or retail, when you're covering for a coworker, Tim, this waitress was covering for the cook. Bless her soul. So she walks out and she looked at Charlie and went, did you want your pickle spear on the side or on the burger? So a pickle spear is like, when you have like a full round pickle and they dice it up into quarters, that's a pickle spear. So that's what I was asking is normally you get those on the side. That's not normally what you get on the burger. So Charlie looked at the lady and he's like, it's fine. Like typically those are on the side, but it's fine. So she gave him 2 pickle spears on the side to make up for the fact that he got him on his burger. So we had this image of like half a pickle, like chopped in half directly on the sandwich. Thankfully, and you guys have got to see the evidence of it. The guy tried to like make it look like pickles that you get on a sandwich up for debate, but they really weren't. And I still wonder if maybe the waitress did that covering for him. But like, if you work at a restaurant, Tim, and it is a normal process for you to put the pickle spear on the side in that little plastic thing we all use, because we use way too much plastic than we ever should in America. Debatable, but it's true. I don't know why, but it's the funniest story to me because like Charlie wrote me, he's just like, you will never believe this. And I just had this image of the 16-year-old kid named Kyle in the back. And the waitress too is like, Kyle, what? It's wrong with you. Pickle spear. Like, this is a normal thing for them, Tim. Every time you've ever seen someone get a sandwich from said restaurant that I won't give the name of, do they always get the pickle spear on the side, Tim? It's a normal
Absolutely,
thing.
100%. And in fact, I'm looking at the picture and now it makes sense. It is like someone got the pickle spear on the side, cut it into 3 pieces and slapped it in the burger. It is bizarre.
And it's not like he diced it up like a normal pickle that you get on your burger. No, Kyle, I don't know if his name's Kyle, and I'm sorry if your name's Kyle. That's just what's coming to mind. Tried his hardest. Either Kyle did it or Susan was like, I have to go out and talk to this customer. I'm going to dice this up real quickly and try to smooth it over. And the reason it's so funny is I've had to cover for coworkers with, I don't want to say stupid stuff, but were moments where you're like, are you kidding me right now, Tim? You know what I mean? You're like, that's what you did? What? And even if this were a younger worker, maybe someone who's not food experienced, it's a pretty standard practice with deli sandwiches in America to put the pickle spear on the side.
Sure.
Anyway, I just died laughing. And when you guys see the photo, you'll get it because... And the poor waitress, that poor waitress, Tim. Have you ever had to cover for a coworker like that before?
Yeah, I mean, in various jobs through the years. I will say one thing about said restaurant. So, I had an experience at that said restaurant, though it was in my favour.
Oh.
So, Hannah and I went and ate in there, and we both had mains, and we both had drinks. And I estimate with the tax and everything, it's probably $40 or just under. Maybe 35, 40, something around that.
Yeah, we spent out $30, yeah.
Yeah, 35, 37, something like that with the tax and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I asked for the check, and he was a very young chap who was serving us. He comes back, he gives me the check, and it was for $13. Now, one of our mains was more than that. So yeah. I don't know what this charge for $13 was. I have no idea. So I left the guy a $10 tip and I signed it and off I went.
Well, Tim asked me, he goes, Joy, I have a dilemma. Was this right? I said, did you give him a good tip? And he said, yes. I was like, then it's fine. They're going to move on with it. Remember you wrote me asking, did I do the right thing? And I'm like, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought. He's tilled it up wrong, but... I gave him $10, which would probably be more than the tip I would have given him if it had been the normal bill. So
exactly,
it's all fine. It all works out in the end.
Well, in this specific restaurant, Tim can tell you it's also a bar or a pub type area. They're not dying for. They're making money.
Exactly.
It's a staple in the area we live.
Exactly, and I will be returning again, and if I have to pay full price, so be it.
I do know, though, Tim is the one who turned me on to their taco salad, but I always ask for no olives and no meat. But I will say it is really good. That's when I know you get there. I get it with almost the same, but with extra olives. See, I'm anti-olive. I'm sorry. Well, here's the problem. I want to like olives, but for some reason, I just don't. Tim, olives to me are your cucumbers. See, I can completely understand where you're coming from. Somebody just listened to this and goes, where the heck is the music? It was a music podcast? I wasn't expecting a review of some local restaurant. I don't know. Yeah, there's somebody in South Africa listening to this going, that's nice and all, but it's not good to me. Wasn't this a music podcast? All right. So I think Tim has an idea to change it up. What's your idea, Tim? Yeah, I just thought, we've been doing CD of the week, tip of the week, Ask Joy, different stuff. And I thought, let's just mix it up a little bit. So I've decided that we should do, for a little while, music news. Yay! And I don't know whether to go, music news. I don't know how that works. We're becoming one of those morning shows, Tim, with like trumpets and like blaring horn. It's the morning zoo with Tim and Joy. No, all right. So what is your music news, Tim? Okay, well, I have a couple of stories, but the first one that I wanted to read out, this happened on the 11th, so just a couple of days ago. You'll be hearing this maybe a few weeks after the fact, but I'm going to publish this to YouTube, so it will go up probably sooner than that. But the sad news that a gentleman called Monty Norman, who wrote the James Bond theme, has died, and he was 94. Now, we did a James Bond episode of the music from James Bond a few episodes ago, and if you wanted to check that out, you can look in your podcast feed on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever you get it if you haven't heard that episode. But the chap who wrote that iconic theme tune sadly passed it, and he was 94. Well, I mean, it sounds like he was around for a while, though. I'd hate to say that because that's always discrediting him, but his music will live on, Tim. Exactly. And he performed a variety double act with comedian Benny Hill. And then, funnily enough, he actually wrote songs for Cliff Richard, which was the last episode that we posted up. Well, it all comes full circle. But did he save Cliff Richard's sandwich? That's all we need to know.
Yeah, that is up for debate. I don't know whether he shared a sandwich with Cliff Richard, whether he saved a sandwich, whether he prepared a sandwich. I know the Cliff Richard sandwich story is running and running. It really is.
Well, and the debate was it coffee or was it tea? Because, coffee wasn't invented in England until like last year.
Exactly. It was. We know when I lived in England, you basically couldn't get coffee. It was, all it was tea. That's all you could get.
In all seriousness, though, are there really big coffee drinkers in the UK, or is it typically tea? Be honest.
No, there are big coffee drinkers. People enjoy coffee and tea in equal measure.
Okay, good. Because, there's a stereotype, but I wasn't sure what the truth was. Glad to know Tim spoke for all of the UK on behalf. He's been nominated or knighted. I'm sorry, knighted to do that.
I'm a hot beverage ambassador, I'll have you know.
Person who was whining earlier about, is this a music podcast? In fact, like, where's the food coming from?
Well, I tell you what, Joy, I'll throw it over to you. You have a music news story for us.
All right, guys, this is the hottest news you've ever heard. And if you don't agree with that, I'm sorry, you're wrong. I shared this to my Facebook, and as soon as Tim said music news, everybody stop the presses. The Spice Girls are going to reunite with Victoria Beckham. First time since 2012 for Jerry's 50th birthday.
What?
Yes, it's true. So Jerry is turning 50. Crazy, right? That they would be old enough. But the hot piece is that Victoria Beckham is coming back for it. It's going to happen on September 17th. Mm-hmm. And this will be the first time since my favorite, which we've talked about on the podcast, when they did the Olympics with where they rode on the cars and all that stuff.
No. Where is this a one-off concert, a tour?
Yeah, it is a one-off concert. It's not a tour. Sadly, basically it's here's your birthday. We're happy for you. Let me see where it's going to be. It's somewhere in the UK.
Probably Wembley or something.
Yeah. And she's married to that guy who's like a car race driver. Race driver. That's what he is, Tim. Car race driver. A race car driver. So the details are still very quiet, but basically it's going to be somewhere in the UK, and it's going to be September 17th, and it's going to be in honor of her birthday. But so her birthday is, it says Jerry will be the first of the band to turn 50, which is very important, with her birth being August 6th, and she's already planning special moments for the big day. They're going to do a performance together at her party, wherever her party will be. I wasn't invited. We're not going to talk about that, Tim. I'm still broken up. But supposedly her party is going to take place on September 17th. And it'll be a 5-piece set, the first time since 2012.
Exciting. Maybe there'll be a live stream. Maybe there'll be something like that so you can tune in, or it'll be on YouTube. Who can say?
I'm still disappointed that Jerry has to send me my invitation. I wrote her on Instagram and on Twitter. Something about leave me alone. I don't know, but I tried. I tried to get hot invitation, and they wouldn't give it to me.
Okay. Well, if I happen to speak to my Spice Girls people, I'll see what I can do for you, Joy.
I don't know. It's something about, why are you writing me? Please leave us alone. Go away. Whatever.
There you
I don't
go.
know what that means, Tim. Like, it's up for debate.
Well, there you go. Well, I have one more last piece of music news that just come off the press. And you are familiar, obviously, with Alice Cooper.
Part of him, yes.
And you're familiar with the guitarist that Alice Cooper has, Nita Strauss. Are you familiar with Nita Strauss?
Yes,
well, Nita Strauss
fantastic.
has been playing with Alice since 2014. She's probably one of the finest shred guitar players out there at the moment. Certainly in that kind of Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Eddie Van Halen. Well, maybe Eddie Van Halen, but that kind of shred guitar type lineage, she's probably the best there is out there at the moment.
Okay.
Anyhow, she put on her Instagram 2 days ago that she was leaving Alice's band and would not be part of the full tour.
Oh, no.
She then also cancelled all of her solo dates because she goes out as a solo band with her partner who plays drums. Now, the rumor mills are swirling because apparently she is going to join another band that she didn't say, but the internet has spoken. And apparently she is going to join Demi Lovato's touring band.
Huh.
Now, the interesting thing about this is prior to this story, I'd never heard of Demi Lovato.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. But actually, Tim, did you go back and listen to? Well, you just found out, so you probably didn't listen. Demi Lovato's got a great voice. She's an amazing singer.
Yeah,
she's actually a Disney star.
Yeah, I'd never heard of the name. I wouldn't know what she looked like if she walked in this room. But I can see from Nita's, if this is true, I mean, this is still just a rumor, but if this is true, I can see why Nita would probably want to do it because, you know, you're playing with a legacy act like Alice Cooper. I'm sure she plays great venues, gets looked after by Alice. But, you know, he's an older guy. How long is that gravy train going to continue? And then a younger artist who's out there with new music and you have the option to join their band, I could see why you'd want to do that.
Well, and I will say, I am not like a big Demi Lovato fan. I know like 3 or 4 songs. She's closer to my age range. That's kind of why I know who she is. Or let me restate this. They are, her pronouns are they, them. She recently admitted that. So they are, they started in Barney and Friends, which I know because my age range. And then she was a Disney, they were a Disney type artist. And then she actually became famous because they are, her voice is great. I keep saying her. I'm sorry, Demi Lovato, if you listen to this, not on purpose. It's hard for me because I still think of her as a female pronoun. Me and Tim are allies, and we would never purposely do anything to me. But they are great. Like if you've never heard Demi Lovato sing, Tim, I would love you to just go listen to it, whether you like the music or not. Very talented artist.
Okay,
very talented artist.
Maybe I'll check Demi out. As I said, the interesting thing here is that Nita Strauss is someone I'm very familiar with, who's played some great stuff with Alice, and she also does like national anthems at football events, and she was involved with a WrestleMania. There's like someone, Nakamura, WWF wrestler, did his opening music or something like that. So someone I follow because I like her guitar playing. But the fact that she's going to leave for someone I'd never heard of up to 2 days ago, I thought was entertaining.
That is kind of entertaining, but it's cool. And I get what you're saying. Demi Lovato is a new upcoming artist, new, fresh thing for them to learn, right?
Sure.
Isn't that what artists want to do?
Exactly. Well, there we go. That's our up-to-the-minute music news.
Demi, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the show. You could tell Tim what he's missing. Anyway, all right. It is Tim's topic tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So it's my turn to pick the topic. And I decided to go a little self-indulgent, just a tiny, tiny little bit self-indulgent. But hopefully there'll be enough room for discussion and we can then continue sandwich stories or something like that. So
it's a music podcast, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So this week's topic is great guitar solos. Now, I'm not saying they're the greatest guitar solos ever because that's up for debate. And in fact, some of the articles I looked at, it was just that Guns N' Roses song you should never speak of, and Hotel California and Bohemian Rhapsody and stuff like that. And they're great solos, but I didn't want to get into some kind of debate what was the greatest. I just wanted to pick out ones which I considered great.
Okay. So what's your first one, Tim?
But there you go. So I'm starting at the top. This is probably the most self-indulgent one of the bunch, but I'm gonna mention it anyway. And this is Queen. This is Brian May from Sheer Heart Attack. And this is Killer Queen.
I love that you picked this one, though, because I've all the songs. So I don't know if you know about this. So first of all, you're a big Katy Perry fan, right? You like Katy Perry. You love Katy Perry. Did you know she models her lifestyle of what she imagined the Killer Queen they were singing about in this song? Have you ever heard her talk about it?
No, I never heard her say that.
She said when she died, she just wants to be like whatever this Killer Queen is in this song, which is super cool. Because I mean, dynamite and laser beams.
Exactly.
But yeah, so, and if you have to pick something from like the 70s, this is one of my top songs. So I love that you said that, but it also has those, I mean, the thing that makes the dynamites and the laser beams as you would is the guitar solo, because it's got kind of like a very futuristic, almost alien kind of sound to me. I don't know how to explain it.
So what's unique about this solo? So when Brian May was coming up, he was a big fan of the guitarist Jeff Beck. And there's a Jeff Beck song called Hi Ho Silver Lining. And Hi Ho Silver Lining has a guitar solo in it, which is a little sloppy, but it's fine. But it has two guitar tracks that start to interact with each other. And when he heard that, he was like, wow, listen to those.
Is
the way
that
those
why
two...
it's like the competing dynamites, the laser beads?
Yeah, how the two parts join up. So Brian May's based his entire style around that, which is stacking guitar parts. Now, in Killer Queen, I think it's 3 or 4 parts, and it starts with the tune, and then there's like these bells that join up, and then all the parts join up in harmony. And it's just so perfectly beautiful.
Well, and Tim has talked about this before. I tend to listen. I'm more of a lyrics person, whereas Tim's more of a music person, I would say, like the actual music. But I have never heard a song that the music played so well with what the lyrics were actually saying. And now that you said that, it makes sense because it literally seems like it's like some. Am I the only person who imagines like an alien? Or is that just me?
I think it may be just you, but that's fine. You can have your alien.
Well, I imagine the Killer Queen is an alien with dynamites and laser beams. But what I'm getting at is the dynamites and laser beams. I keep making that reference, but because that is so what I hear when I hear the guitar, it's like two things meeting and getting this really cool harmonic sound that Tim's talking about. Now that he explains it to me, I get it. That's really actually cool. I've never thought about it but just that's the way my brain hears that song. That for debate.
Sure. And, and what I find is that the more I get into home recording and learning how my studio software works and making videos for the internet and stuff like that, the more my guitar sounds like Brian May by stacking guitar parts. But I think it just happens. I don't know how that works, but it just happens.
Organically, it's just naturally happening. So I need to know, do any of our other audience members assume that Killer Queen's about an alien, or is that just me? I don't know. I always assumed it was an alien.
I mean, you could be right. I would imagine being it's a Freddie Mercury lyric, it's probably about sort of aristocracy and things like that. But I don't know. You could be right. He might have been writing about an alien.
It's literally a queen, so it probably is like Aristotic, kind of like medieval. But for some reason, the sound of the guitar and like just the things they're saying give me a futuristic feel. And maybe alien's not the right, but you know what I'm talking about? To have like a very futuristic kind of sound, I guess is what I mean.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that was not scientific. What's the next song?
Okay. Well, the next one I'm going to go for is Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. And this is the song Heartbreaker. Now, as you know, in Heartbreaker, there is a bit in the middle where most of the band stops and it's just Jimmy Page wailing away. And that's that breakdown.
What seems like a very long time, honestly.
Yeah. And he's wailing away. And the reason I picked this song, much how Brian May was influenced by Jeff Beck, Eddie Van Halen heard that breakdown section and loved it, couldn't work out how he was playing it just regularly with a pick, and then worked out, well, hang on a minute, he's hitting that extra note. Maybe if I tapped it with my other hand, I could get that sound. And that is where he claimed the genesis of his two-handed tapping technique came from.
Well, I would have never guessed that. That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, that's a story I read in a guitar magazine, but I've heard that in interviews as well.
I mean, it makes sense, though, because you think about it. Once again, it's kind of like a layering of sound that I would have never picked out until you said, you know what I mean, Tim? Until you say it. Now I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's almost like, guys, there's an actual rhyme and reason behind what they're doing on the guitar. Just saying. But no, I mean, I'm glad you picked Heartbreaker, too, because, like, it's one of their less known songs, which I actually really like this song. But have you ever played this song, Tim? Because I feel like it'd be hard for, I don't know. Is it easy to pick up on?
The riff itself, I mean, that's dead easy. I've jammed it at jam nights and stuff like that because it's really just that riff, and then I think it changes key. The middle section, probably not, but I've winged my way through it. It's not... In its simplest form, it's not that difficult to play. But, you know, if you play it note for note, there's that whole piece in the middle. And
I'd say the middle part just seems like, I was joking about it. Seems like it goes on for a while, but it does. I can't imagine trying to play that note for note. But do you really need to play a guitar solo? Okay, Tim, here's your expertise. Like, I feel like if you're playing a song that has a guitar break in it, you don't really need to play whatever the original artist played in the guitar break because the audience is just there for, like, the theatrics of it anyway. I don't really feel like you need to.
It depends. I think some solos need to be played more or less note for note because it's so integral with the song. If you was playing, like, as I said, Bohemian Rhapsody, you have to play that solo note for note. If you're playing Hotel California, you probably need to play that solo note for note. Some pieces that you play, you can sort of hint at it, that it's roughly the same. You get some of the hooks in there and it's enough. But there are some songs where the guitar player in a cover band will wail away in the solo section and it just sounds wrong.
So that's interesting. It also depends on how early in the night and how many drinks the audiences have, I would imagine. I'm kidding, everybody.
I mean, that has something to do with it. I mean, that's valid.
You see where my brain went. Well, I mean, I think it probably depends on, like, you're right. If it's a song that everybody knows heart for heart, like, you know what I mean? Like you're saying, Bohemian Rhapsody, everyone's going to know that word for word and know exactly what it's supposed to sound like. But if it's a little bit less known of a song, I imagine it, like you said, you just hint at it and maybe they won't pick up.
Exactly.
And if it's like 8 a.m. versus 12 a.m., the crowd might be a different thing.
Exactly.
All right. Anyway, what's next, Tim?
Okay, so this one is Aerosmith. And it's the song Janie's Got a Gun. Now, we spoke about Janie's Got a Gun, I think, on a few episodes ago.
I don't remember why it came up, but I'm very familiar with the song.
Yeah. Now, what's unique about this song is that in the video, he is playing a black Les Paul with EMGs, Gibson guitar. And it has a very unique sound to it. And it never sounded like he was playing a Gibson Les Paul at all. And then when I looked into it, when I was researching this, and I thought I knew this, but my research for this episode confirmed it, he is actually playing in the solo an electro-acoustic guitar.
Well, that's probably why it has a different sound. It does change, like, sounds. So, Tim, when Tim talks about sometimes I just bring him up, like the lyrics or whatever, to kind of refresh my brain. I want you guys to know I just Googled Janie's Got a Gun, Aerosmith, and the genre on Google is labeled children's music.
Hey?
I'm going to take a picture as evidence, because if you guys know anything about Janie's Got a Gun, what is her daddy? It's not about children's music.
That is weird. I tell you.
I'm serious. I took a picture. It's evidence. I have evidence.
See, I do things not for that song, but I do because I maintain my own iTunes library with my own MP3s that I've ripped and stuff. Sometimes I put comedic things in the genre field for my own entertainment, but I don't think they do that on Google. So
no, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So I joke about, it's funny that I ended up doing a podcast with Tim, because when I was in high school, and I was the youngest person in this, when Yahoo Chat was a thing, I was part of a group that was just a music trivia group. And everybody in that music trivia group was from the UK. I'm kind of convinced that some of your friends may have been people who was music trivia back in the early 2000s. Anyway, we don't know for sure, but it's possible. So, and what it would do is somebody would host and they play the music through their sound card, so, like, the audio was good, and people would guess the songs. Well, every once in a while, because we were downloading off of things like LimeWire and Kazaa, you get a mislabel. And I one time got one today. I felt so bad about it. I thought for sure it was going to be like a funny version of Axl Rose singing a different song than it was. And then it wasn't. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? That's the original. And I was so disappointed. So when I saw that children's music label, that's all I could think of. Anyway, I took a picture for photographical evidence. It happens. It says genres, children's music, comma pop, comma rock.
There we go.
I mean, the song's about guns. Like, Janie literally has a gun to Not that this has anything to do with the guitar solo, but,
Goodness me.
I will say, though, this song, back to the guitar solo, what you just said makes sense, though, because it does have a very the sound is very different from the actual song to when he's doing the solo. But there's a difference in, like, the way it sounds. Yeah,
it's an acoustic guitar plugged in is what it is. So it is, I think there's probably some kind of electric guitar effects on it, or compression or something like that, but it doesn't, it sounds incredibly unique. And I'd always wondered all through the years why it had that sound, and that's what it is.
Well, I don't know. I've wondered that too. And now you answered. Also, Janie's Got a Gun is going to be on my head for the next 6 years. So I'm already hearing, what did her daddy in my brain. So it's gone. That's all I'm going to hear for the next year. It's an earworm. It's an earworm.
At least it's not Wilson Phillips's Hold On, which just entered my brain when I was thinking that.
Good. Thanks, Tim. It wasn't until you said it. Now it's there, which I love that song. And it always makes me think of the movie Bridesmaids. All right. What's the next song?
Okay. So I couldn't have a guitar solo episode without having one of the greatest guitar, maybe solo is not the right word, guitar figure, I suppose.
Moment in time.
Okay. And this is played by Jeff Baxter. And Jeff Baxter was a session guitar player, and he famously played in Steely Dan, very accomplished guitar player in many genres of music. However, I consider this his finest work. It's very small. Okay. It only happens for a second or two, but I consider this his finest work. This is Dolly Parton's 9 to 5.
Of course. I mean, would there be anything that, like, if you play on a Dolly song, it will forever be your life's work, Tim. Nothing will compare.
Exactly. And the bit I mean in the song, I think it's the second verse. Okay. And then the guitar part goes doodle-doo, and it only appears once.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think Jeff Skunk Baxter, session guitarist, member of Steely Dan extraordinaire, I think he peaked at that point.
At that moment. So my favorite part about that song, though, is, well, that is cool for Mr. Jeff Beck, but when she wrote it on her nails. So those who don't know that typewriter song, that's supposed to sound like that. She played it on her nails to get, and that's how she got the da 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 da. Every time you hear the da, that's her hitting her literal acrylic nails together to get that sound. So for me, that's really cool because I play the ukulele, and a lot of times the ukulele sounds, they'll hit the ukulele right to them with that to get a certain sound. So she basically did that. But she was thinking in the movie, it's about people working in office. She wanted something that sounded like a typewriter. And you hear her talk about it. She plays it on her nails. That's how the whole rhythm for that entire song came to be.
And it is a fantastic song, as we've covered before. The video is amazing. There's a lot of like mullets going on. There's a lady there doing backing vocals. There's a dude with a legal pad just tapping it for no apparent reason. It's brilliant. I can't even begin to tell you how great it is. And
what I always think is kind of interesting, Tim, and I don't know, and this could be once again like my brain that thinks Killer Queens about aliens, but that's up for debate. That sound where she's hitting her nails, we're talking about, it's sounding like, the typewriter. It also reminds me of a ticking of a clock.
Yeah, it does, and I suppose
because it's 9 to 5.
Yeah, because if you're working 9 to 5, typically you are looking at the clock because you can't wait till it's 5 o'clock and you can go home.
We wouldn't do that, Tim. I don't know what you're talking about. But I literally work 9 to 5 every day. But anyway, but that I was thinking about it. I was like, yes, it works as a typewriter, but I don't even know if she meant for it to come that way. But it's also the exact rhythm to the ticking of a clock.
There we
Genius.
Are. The genius of Dolly, and yet another tick on your bingo card if you follow along.
And the guitar, what did you say his name was?
Jeff Skunk Baxter. He was a session guitarist extraordinaire and a member of Steely Dan.
See, and that Mr. Jeff, I'm sorry, there's nothing that will compare. Nothing will compare to that moment.
There we go. Fabulous. All right, well let me go on to the next song. So this is a solo on a Carpenters song, Goodbye to Love. Are you familiar with that?
I am. My mom's a big Carpenters fan.
Yeah, and it's an interesting sound because normally when you play guitar, I mean, it's different now with the way equipment's different, but certainly back then, you would plug into a guitar amplifier, you stick a microphone in front of it, and the sound of the amp, speaker, and guitar is your sound. This, he plugged directly into the mixing desk, which at the time was a very unusual way of doing it. And it has a very hot, overdriven, clipping type of sound to it. The guitarist who played that solo was a guy called Tony Peluso. And in fact, if you look on his Wikipedia entry, it says that's like the first thing about it. He was their lead guitarist. He was also a record producer. But like the thing that he's famous for is the fuzzy solo on Goodbye to Love.
Huh. I mean, so I just have to ask you, Tim, and this has nothing to do with the guitar or nothing to do with, it's about the Carpenters.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they kind of, their eyes are very strange looking. Have you ever seen a picture of the Carpenters?
Yeah, I mean, I've
Karen
seen
and Richard Carpenter.
I've seen their videos. I'm a big fan of calling occupants of interplanetary craft. I've seen that video 100 times. I've
Their
never
eyes are
really,
terrifying.
I've never really spent a lot of time looking into their eyes.
Well, to be fair, I do think they did have a drug problem, but were like addicted to Quaaludes at one point, from what I understand. But their photos sometimes are really scary to me. But I like their music. And they're really talented. Like their songs are great. I don't want to get mad at, and they're known for their, because anytime you have two siblings, you're going to get great harmonies. You're going to distinct. They've got that soft musical sound. And she's a she's like a counter alto, so she's not really an alto, but she's not really a soprano. She's somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I mean, they started when they were young too, right? Like 14, 15 years old or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe I made me, but I just look at their eyes sometime, everybody.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, I will be making sure to look at a Carpenter's video, stare into their eyes and see their soul. However, it may have to be during a rewatching of Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, which is the Carpenter's finest work, in my opinion.
It was. I can agree with that. And maybe it could just be that their photos are all old. And so it's just the artwork. I don't know. But my mom was a big Carpenters fan, so I heard them very much growing up. And they're super musically talented. Don't like each of them play like 5 different instruments or something crazy?
Yeah, and then Karen Carpenter, I mean, a lot of people would consider Karen Carpenter a token drummer, but no, she was an amazing drummer.
Yeah, but she didn't just play the drums. She played like the piano. She played like I mean, if you go look at, she played like 17 instruments, and she's like got like 3 out. Is a counter alto, but she's got like, she can sing at like 3 octaves, which is like unheard of for an alto.
Sure.
So as much as I was trying to, I also think they're fantastic. She's known as a great vocalist, like one of the best of all time. Sadly, she ended up dying of like heart failure, though.
I think she struggled with bulimia or some kind of eating disorder.
She was anorexic. She had an eating disorder.
That was it. Yeah. But terribly sad.
Sadly, being in the part, and that's why I feel bad now. What I said, being in the public eye is hard. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I would know, with the extent of the podcast. Not really in the public eye, but it seems very hard.
Well, Joy, you are in the public eye. I mean, this little podcast that we make in our respective houses is an international thing. There's people that listen to it. I mean, it's yeah.
Look at me, caught above and beyond. But in all seriousness, it probably is really hard. And sadly, she died very young.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So now that that took a sad turn, Tim, what's the next song?
Okay. So this, which one should I pick? Okay. So this one is by The Who.
Sweet. Okay.
And as we know, Pete Townsend is not a guitar player who is known for guitar solos. He is the master of the rhythm guitar. He took rhythm guitar to a new level. He was, and as we've discussed before, The Who was an odd band where so much the bass player was the lead guitarist, Pete was really the drummer, and then Keith was like everything else. He was like the orchestra on top of it. And it was weird, but it worked. But sometimes Pete, especially in later years, would play solos. But certainly during the classic era of The Who, it was not common for him to play a solo. But the song that I've picked is I Can See for Miles. Now, the solo in it is quite unique. It's one note. That's all it is. It's just one note. Did
you pick this song in spite of me, Tim? You know my feelings about this song.
I know. Well, I picked it. I picked it because for the fact it was unique, because it was Pete and it was one note.
The song can go for miles and miles and miles. So those who have not been around for long, I make a joke about. It's actually not a bad song, and I know what he's talking about. It's unique sounding, and that's what stands out. Because for those who don't know it, literally the song goes, "I can go for miles and miles," and it does. It has like a really cool like one note sound that strums and just stays, which works for the "I can go for miles." Right, it plays with the song. So I know why Tim picks it. But when I used to work at a previous job, I had to hear that song now nonstop, and I would come home every day. And all I would hear was in my brain, "I could go for miles and miles." But that is, I mean, I guess it was effective because the song does stand out to me to be very distinct in that way, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Like it's almost so monotone in a good way.
Sure. I mean, there are other lyrics to it, but yeah, the refrain of "I can see for miles and miles and miles" is the bit that everyone remembers. But as I said, next time you listen to it, just check out the lead guitar break. It is literally just one note. And when Pete gets that note going, he just doesn't let it go.
Well, and no, but I think that's kind of cool though, because the whole point of the song is going on and on and on, or I can see for on and on and on. So that note, just like I think that's what makes a really good kind of whenever the music can. So how do I say this without sounding dumb? Hold on. I think that they did a good job of taking what the song is trying to express and making it work really well with the person playing it. Okay. So while I make the joke, about "I can see for miles and miles and miles," like it's stuck in my head forever, that one note just barreling and going for miles and miles and miles and miles is perfect. It's music genius, whether it annoys me or not. Does that make sense though? Because there is a whole thing about like seeing through the haze, something about a smile, because smiles rhyme with smile. That's all I remember.
Well, at least it's not rhyming Christmas time with mistletoe and wine.
That is iconic. It will never be let down. The moment I realized, I was like, is this song called something about mistletoe and wine? And then as soon as I heard Christmas time, and then the next lyric was mistletoe and wine, I was like, that's some great rhyming skills.
Let me tell you, Joy, when we post the episodes, so there's a little insider business here. When we post the episodes, when they go live, I always download them and listen to them. Because one, I want to hear how we can make the podcast better. And if anything, I try and listen to it completely objectively. It's best as you can when it's you, but I try to listen to it objectively. And the other thing is I want to listen for if there's any technical faults in it, because if during the editing process or during the stuff I do with the files, I made a mistake, I want to be able to pull that podcast and redo it and put it back up again.
Of course.
Anyhow, I listened to it today. And there's my two takeaways of the Cliff Richard episode. One, Cliff Richard sandwich and all of the business about his sandwich, and people who have written to us and commented on our posts about Cliff Richard sandwich. It's I want to get a bumper sticker made that says Cliff sandwich or something. I don't know. It's going to be a thing. So that was my one takeaway from the Cliff Richard episode that posted today.
And then it's Christmas time and wine.
Mistletoe and wine. Yes, absolutely. And that was the other thing. You was very pleased with the rhyming of Christmas time and mistletoe and wine. And that
I just wasn't expecting it because Tim told me, listen to this mistletoe, wine. I don't know what the name of the song was. Something Christmassy. And then I was like, wait a second. But my favorite part, though, Tim is right. I go back and listen to every episode. And it used to be, I had this problem with, I don't want to hear myself. Tim can tell you get over it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Once you hear yourself 1,000 times, you know what you sound like. Sometimes you sound like an idiot. It is what it is. But I was like, I listen. There's occasionally certain parts of the episode that when I know where it's going, if it makes me laugh the next time I listen back to him, I know it's a great episode. That one made me laugh for 10 minutes straight. And then when people start writing me about, I'm worried about Cliff Richardson. I was like, iconic. I mean, it ranks up there with Stevie Nicks. That one's up there, Tim. And Meat Raffles.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe Cliff got the contents for his sandwich from a meat raffle and it was given to him by Stevie Nicks. I mean, the whole thing could just all come together.
And then there was the debate about how do they use their ovens in Europe. It isn't unlike because we use Fahrenheit, and Tim's like, I don't know, it don't cook. That one was pretty iconic too.
Yeah, and the gas
Those were on the
marks
top.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That's a little insider of the behind the scenes of the no-name Musicast empire.
Oh, Lord. All right. Mr. Cliff Richard, if you're listening and you know what happened to the sandwich, please tell us.
Yeah, if you could, we'd just like to get this one, put this one to bed once and for all. A sandwich you ate
in the drink.
Yeah, a sandwich you ate in 1958 or something. If you could just let us know, that would be fantastic.
On a bus. My favorite part is like, as he's driving the bus towards France, the people start looking more and more French. Like you start seeing people wearing berets. This guy's got like a big thing of bread. Like the shirts become more and more like it couldn't be more cliche. All right, Tim. What about guitar and solos and something music?
Okay, all right. So let's try and steer this one back onto the topic of great guitar solos.
Steer like you're driving a bus. Continue.
Okay, so this one is a Beatles track, and it's Taxman.
Oh,
now,
that's
the
a good
unique thing about Taxman is that the sound of the guitar solo in it, a lot of people will tell you it's George Harrison. It has a very much of a George Harrison sound of the era. George Harrison later on in his career got into playing a lot of slide guitar, and his tone did mellow a little bit. But around this era, he had a very kind of spiky attack to his sound and the way that he phrased the notes and stuff like that. And Taxman has the guitar solo that sounds very much like that. However, it was not George Harrison. It was Paul McCartney who played the guitar solo on Taxman.
Did George Harrison write Taxman? Because I was always under the understanding he did.
Yes, he did. And he wrote the song, working on the song. And apparently he was not too fussed who played the solo. And Paul was around. And Paul's like, I could probably play a lead on that. And he's like, yeah, Paul, you take it. It's fine.
I mean, I don't know that I ever really knew enough to know that people thought it was George Harrison playing, because I'm not that much of a guitar person that I would have picked up on that. But I just knew that he wrote it, or I was under the understanding he wrote it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a cool song, and also it's very UK-ish to complain about tax people.
Yes, absolutely. Well, at the time, the government that was in power at the time were taxing the rich incredibly heavily. And I think it was estimated that the Beatles had to give up around 90% of their income.
95%. I've always heard
taxes,
95%.
Yeah, and I think later on, it could have been around the same year. I'm not entirely sure. But the Rolling Stones all went to live in the south of France and wrote an album called In Exile for the same reason, because they were just being utterly taxed to death.
And that's why we in America just had to throw all that tea in the ocean.
There we are. I mean, and even now, taxes in the UK tend to be a lot higher than they are in the US. Well,
and we're not going to get into politics. I think that the sweet spot somewhere is probably in the middle, right? Because there's a whole thing about maybe we aren't paying enough, they're paying too much. Somewhere is the sweet spot's probably in the middle, like everything else. But yeah, I've always heard 95% is what they were taxed, but I've never really Googled that to find out if that were true or not. I always thought it's kind of like, we're as popular as Jesus or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of quotable things with the Beatles, but yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, it's one of those things though. I feel like the Beatles are one of those things that like people have a lot of assumptions about, but when you go back and you start Googling, maybe they're not 100% correct at all times. But when you're what's known as the most popular rock band of all time, that's going to happen. Yeah,
I often say this in we spoke of Demi Lovato earlier, and we've spoken to other artists like that. Now, they may be having a great career right now, and they may be very popular and selling millions of records. But let me tell you, 50 years, 100 years, no one's going to have heard of Demi Lovato. But I tell you who in 100 years' time, who they're going to be talking about, it's the Beatles.
And I mean, with good reason. But I will say, me and Tim talked about this on one of the podcasts. It was one of my episodes where I talked about maybe like the good, the bad, the ugly of artists. I can't remember what the specific title was. It's very interesting when you start learning about John Lennon as a person. He's very different than you think he would be.
Yeah, he was. I get the impression that he was not necessarily a good person.
He was aggressive. Like there was like one time me and him. So there's two different things I remember we talked about in the episode. But the one that stood out to me was him just randomly walking up and punching a guy in an airport.
Yeah.
No one knows why. But you know what? It makes you also wonder, Tim, drugs.
Sure. But as we've said before, I mean, when we spoke about Clapton and his racist rants, I mean, I was drunk, I was on drugs. But I mean, I've been drunk. I don't come out with like hideously offensive stuff. That stuff has to be in there to begin with.
But on the flip side, I have this theory in my head, and it has not been disconfirmed. Paul McCartney is like the nicest human being in the world. I
don't disagree with that.
He is the sweetest guy ever. And I actually love this time when he was talking about John Lennon, and we were talking about, because he tends to live in America more now than he does in the UK.
His wife is from the US. He has a farm in Rye, which is like in the south of England. But I think he does spend some of his time in the United States as well. Well,
somebody was talking I think he might, I don't know if he's a citizen. He's here enough that they were asking his opinion on like the political landscape of America. And somebody was talking about gun rights, and he goes, well, I can talk about that firsthand. I lost a dear friend to like a gun issue. And it dawned on me what he was talking about. I was like, that's so smart. But like every time I hear him talk or when I see him or everything, he seems like the nicest human being in the world.
Exactly. And also, can I say McCartney, who is 80, played for over 2 hours at Glastonbury.
Yeah. I saw that and it looked awesome. Also, but I have a theory that Ringo's really nice too. Though I can't confirm or deny it.
Ringo is Ringo.
That's probably a better way of saying it. Like, I don't think he's mean, but he's very specific.
Yeah, he won't sign things and things like that. He does a thing on his birthday where he gets everyone to say peace and love at 12 o'clock. That's the thing he likes. He does an Instagram live and everyone says peace and love, and everyone around the world says it at the same time, and it makes him very happy. Now, I watched the one 2 years ago live because it fell on a weekend, and it was coming up to the time. And he said, we're nearly done. He said, well, it's 12 o'clock, peace and love. He said, let's do it to my watch. He said, it's probably the most expensive.
See, but that doesn't mean that he's like, I'm thinking of like a good guy. Like, I don't want to say like, I think he's a good guy. I think he's like a genuine person. Whereas from what I'm getting about John Lennon, he was kind of cracked in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And then certainly if you watch the Beatles anthology video series that came out in the 90s, he was the most straightforward of all the Beatles.
I will say, though, the best thing I've ever read was there was this book. It's this lady who used to work at Apple Records, Miss Odell or Miss something. And I like to read, but I don't have as much time to read as I want to. And Tim's like me. Sometimes we want to read, but we're not readers naturally. We've talked about Tim's not a big reader either. But that story is so interesting when she worked at Apple Records, and she was one of the ladies who's sitting on the most famous, I think one of the most famous rooftop, the Get Back rooftops concert of all time. Her insights, 10 out of 10, would recommend that book to anyone, even if you don't like to read it. If you just want to do an Audible book, she talks about different artists she came in contact with, because it wasn't just the Beatles on Apple Records. Yes, it was their record studio, and that's the biggest. But I mean, she talks about like Eric Clapton and just like people that were so huge in that time, and she talks about like different things that they would do to get the sounds they needed on the albums, like recording in the bathroom and just like different interactions. And she even goes into detail when George Harrison went in his big spiritual type thing, and his wife, and then you got Stella McCartney here, and it's like a whole thing. But that book, if you've never read it, I will post it, I will find it, I will send it to everyone. Stand by. It's one of the most interesting books to give you like kind of what you think when maybe you could be right or wrong about the Beatles. There
we go. Well, that's a tip of the week right there for you, Joy's book tip. Maybe that'll be something we'll expand at the beginning of the show. Joy's book tips. I don't know.
Well, and I'm not sponsored by I can't even remember the name of the lady. I guess it's like Miss Odell or something. Okay. I mean, how cool would it have been, Tim, to work at Apple Records?
I mean, it'd been absolutely fantastic.
Like, what are the chances? And she's not the only one, I'm sure. But if you look, when you look against the wall of the Get Back, because if you're like me, you've seen that concert where they're on the rooftop 1,000 times. There's like 3 people. There's like someone with Yoko Ono, a woman sitting right beside Yoko Ono, and then I don't remember who the rest of them are. It's her. She's the woman sitting directly right there against the wall.
Okay.
Yep. Great book. Great book. I found it one day randomly at a Barnes and Nobles.
There we go.
Because that's where you find books. That makes sense, Joy. I don't know why nobody needs to know that. All right, let's back to the show.
Okay, well, let me pick another guitar solo out. So this one is Stevie Wonder, and it's the song Maybe Your Baby from the album Talking Book. Now, I don't think this was necessarily a single, but it opens the album Talking Book, and it's an absolutely fantastic Stevie Wonder track. The whole of Talking Book is amazing, but this opens the album, and it is just absolutely superb. Now, the interesting thing about the guitar solo on this song, and in fact, some of the other guitar parts on this album, is it was played by a young session guitarist at the time who was part of Stevie Wonder's band, and that would be Ray Parker Jr.
Yeah. Yep.
And Ray Parker,
that's the list.
Yeah, and Ray Parker Jr., of course, went on later to write and perform the iconic Ghostbusters theme.
Well, and he was on quite a few different people's like he's performed with quite a few different other people besides himself, of course, and Stevie Wonder, from what I understand.
Yeah, he was a very accomplished session guitar player of that time, and he played on lots of recordings. But probably his most famous work is with Stevie Wonder. If you wanted to sort of cherry pick some of the session work that he's done.
Well, I've heard he was with I know he was with the Supremes at one point, and that kind of I feel like he did a lot of the stuff with the Motown kind of sound, which makes sense why he would have eventually wrote the Ghostbusters song. But is there something about the Ghostbusters song samples another song, or am I going crazy?
No, what happened is that Huey Lewis and the News were down to make the Ghostbusters theme. The studio had them down to do it. However, they had just done The Power of Love for Back to the Future, and they wanted to be sort of distance themselves from Huey Lewis because they didn't want the two films to be intertwined. They wanted it to be its own separate thing because they both released about the same time. So they got Ray Parker Jr. involved. And I don't know whether Ray Parker Jr. heard the original demo or something like that. But effectively, he just made almost a copy of Huey Lewis and the News's I Want a New Drug. They're effectively the same song apart from the lyrics.
That's what it is. You're right. Okay.
And then what happened is that Huey Lewis sued Ray Parker Jr., but it was settled almost immediately out of court because, Ghostbusters was going to be this big, huge film. They didn't want a lawsuit clouding it, and they didn't want it to get in the press. So some money changed hands, some things were signed, and it was never spoken of again. And part of the deal is that they were never allowed to speak about it. Now,
see, I remember something like that.
But, however, they did a Behind the Music, VH1 Behind the Music with Huey Lewis and the News. And he made the mistake of mentioning this lawsuit, which breached the terms. So Ray Parker Jr. successfully sued Huey Lewis for talking about the lawsuit.
That's what it was, because I watched that. Because my mom's a big VH1 fan. I watched a lot of VH1 growing up. I knew there was something. I just couldn't remember what it was specifically.
Yeah, it's like he sued the guy he ripped his song off from. Absolutely fantastic.
I mean, at least he's successful, Tim. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it for real. But Ray Parker Jr., I've always heard he's played on thousands of songs. But I can't think of him without just thinking of the mustache. Do you know somebody has that mustache?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I think of. I don't know about his guitar skills. I don't know about any ghosts he was afraid of. All I know is he had a mustache.
I must, if you want classic 80s Ray Parker Jr.
No, you're going to be like, I must ask you a question. Continue.
No, not even I'm that corny, honestly.
Okay, well, I was.
Well, I was just gonna say on the Ray Parker Jr. topic, I highly recommend you watch the music video for Ghostbusters if you haven't seen it recently. It is a slice of 80s life like you wouldn't believe. It has stars of the day in it. They're in Times Square. The Ghostbusters are in it. It is just amazing. It's one of the. I don't often watch a lot of music videos and stuff on YouTube. I prefer to listen to music than to watch it on the whole. But there are some certain videos and certain live performances I really enjoy. And once in a while, I have to pull that up if I haven't seen it for a while because it is so good.
I mean, and it's like him, and you got Bill Murray, and like they're right behind him, and they're all wearing the little jumpsuits, and they're walking through, and they're like they've got little dance moves and stuff. I don't remember it all that well, but I remember the pieces. I need to go back.
Well, there we are. That's my YouTube tip of the week for you.
We literally didn't speak of Stevie Wonder at all at once. But we love you, Stevie. All right, what's the next song?
Okay, well, I'm going to do a couple more before we wrap up this episode. So this is the Rolling Stones. And, of course, the guitar player is Keith Richards. And the song is Gimme Shelter. Now, what's unique about Gimme Shelter is a number of things. One, it's in the Knight Rider episode Goliath. Two, it's my favorite Rolling Stones song of all time. But more importantly from a guitar geek perspective, it's one of the very few Rolling Stones songs that's played as a full band that only has Keith Richards on it. And the reason is Brian Jones had just left the Rolling Stones, and Mick Taylor was not yet a member of the Rolling Stones, who was the guitar player who initially replaced him. And so all the parts on Gimme Shelter, the rhythm and the leads, are all Keith. Now, Keith typically is not a soloist. I mean, yeah, he played the riff to satisfaction, and he's played solos on some songs, but he's not. He's more known as they call him the human riff because, you know, his style that he plays. So to play all the lead guitar parts and stuff is unique on a Stones song. And that's why I picked this one as a great guitar solo.
Well, and I find that interesting. The one thing I always think of when I think of the Rolling Stones is we talk a little bit about Queen doing this, but the Rolling Stones lyrics and the sound are usually much more deep than like I think people realize.
Sure.
They have and so the guitar parts on this work so well for this song because it's a deep song. Like, I don't know, because this is from the Let It Bleed album, which would have been like late 60s. But you know, it's usually Jagger and Richards, they're like a co-writing team. But for some reason, like if you go back and you actually read the lyrics to any Rolling Stone songs, they're quite deeper than I think that people realize. Maybe it's just me who thinks that, but I
absolutely 100%. I mean, I think Jagger is the primary lyric songwriter, I think, though I don't know quite how they collaborate. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Lots of themes, lots of topics are covered. I mean, they have their share of, you know, I love her and she loves me and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of the themes in the songs do go a lot deeper than you would think they would.
Well, and this song's literally about war, right? Like Gimme Shelter is about war. I don't know all the details. There's a lot of dark themes in their music, but I think what's interesting and what is important is the lyrics to it, the songwriting and the guitarists, they portray that very well in a way that they can package it for the masses. Does that make sense, Tim?
Sure.
Because if you just write a song that's about war and it's a little intense, you might not get a general public one to hear it. But for some reason, the Rolling Stones were able to take crossing those lines. We've talked about other artists who've done this, and they're not alone in this, and make it a pop hit or a rock hit or a pop rock hit, right? Because it just made popular rock music at the time, and put it in a package that is different and it goes out on the radio and it might even fly under the radar in some ways. And that's what I think of when I think of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail exactly on the head there.
Yeah. I don't know if that's for sure. I mean, I don't talk to Mick Jagger all the time. He won't call me back, but just a theory.
Well, there we are. I know I've told my Jerry Hall story on the podcast before, so I don't need to reiterate that one. The other thing, of course, with Gimme Shelter is it has the absolutely amazing backing vocal from Mary Clayton.
Clayton did. Yep. And she's got a great voice. Like, it sounds so perfect. It's like, I don't know. It sounds dark, but it doesn't at the same time. And I think her voice is so pretty on it that it makes it's just almost haunting.
Yeah, and there's a bit in current recording techniques, they would have recut this piece, but you know, things were a lot rawer back then. And then when she's singing that backing vocal, her voice pops or croaks. And you hear Jagger in the background go, woo! And if you listen closely, you can hear that in the background. Just as her voice cracks, he says that. And it's, as I said, these days you would go back and recut it. But I'm glad they left it in because it's just so real.
I mean, I guess it's, for me, it's such a moody song. It makes it feel more real when that kind of stuff happens.
Exactly.
Plus, we talked about Janis Joplin had that kind of thing to her voice too, and it wouldn't have worked any other way. Yeah. Same thing. All right, Tim, what's your next song?
Okay, well, I'll close out the episode with this song.
All right.
This is Lindsey Buckingham.
Okay.
And Lindsey Buckingham at the time was a member of Fleetwood Mac. And they're on their album Tango in the Night, they had a song called Big Love. And unlike early Fleetwood Mac, Big Love has a kind of 80s pop production sound to it. It has some sound effects, like things going on in it. And, you know, it's what it is. It's of the era of that 80s
So it would have
Fleetwood
been
Mac.
late 80s for them, right?
Yeah. And it certainly doesn't sound out of place for the era. And if you listen to the whole album of Tango in the Night, it fits in the context of the album. However, Lindsey Buckingham has played this. There's one version on YouTube which you can find, and I have it on like a Fleetwood Mac like greatest hits compilation type thing as well. He plays this by himself, Big Love. He sings it, and then he plays guitar. He's playing a electric classical guitar, and he's playing all the parts of the song on that guitar. And his guitar playing on this song is amazing. I mean, I wish I could play this song as well as he could, because it's all finger picking and it's like rhythm and bass and stuff like that. Stuff that my brain can't even begin to comprehend.
It's very kind of a swing kind of song to it.
Yeah, it's such a great thing. And then,
Wow.
I mean, and the solo, if you like, is the bit in the middle where he's playing the middle of the song. But I don't know, this version is so good. It is so much better than the original.
And I've never heard that, but that sounds cool. I mean, I don't know much about him. I mean, I know about the relationship problems and the drama of Fleetwood Mac when it comes to Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, but I don't know much about his guitar playing. But I would imagine, I mean, they're known for being kind of like, you know, an iconic sound to begin with. He's got to be raw talent. Right, like I would have.
Oh,
so that's
100%. And I will make sure I post this video up to all of the Twitter and to the Facebook and all that kind of stuff, because it's just so impressive and it's so much better than the original version of the song.
He also has really cool hair.
Yeah, I think that 65% of his guitar tone actually does come from his hair.
I mean, it's pretty fair. I mean, it's something to do with it, because I mean, look at Brian May. The hair never changes; the guitar just gets better. Your hair affects your ability to play. It's true.
One thing I found though, his hair went white with age, and his tone became a little bit more shrill, and they happened about the same time.
See, it's related, everybody. It's science. You heard it here first. Your hairstyle affects your ability to play guitar.
Yeah, or maybe it's a kind of treble booster he's using. But anyway, it's his hair. It's his
Tim,
hair.
don't ruin it. Don't tell Ian. Ian will think he needs to chop off his hair.
Let me tell you, Ian Husbands will never, ever chop off his hair. He's had that hair. I've known Ian for maybe, I don't know, probably 30 years or something at this point. I've known him more or less my whole adult life. That hair has never changed. It will never change. The hair makes the man. It's obvious, Tim. That's why it affects your guitar playing. And if Ian chopped off the hair, his guitar playing would go downhill. It's obvious. Should have thought of it sooner. Exactly. I mean, I was trying to think when my hair was long and curly, whether my guitar playing was different. Well, I was younger and I wasn't as experienced when I had longer curly hair.
Well, Tim, you got to start growing it out and see if your guitar playing changes. Like do like a study.
I don't know. When you get into the short hair realm, I don't know if I can go long again. And plus, my hair's going grey, and I don't want to be one of these guys with like straggly part grey long hair. Is that wrong?
Would your guitar playing get more shrill, as you just said, as it turns grayer?
I don't. I don't know. Possibly. I think, you know, I try and have a very warm, rich sound. I mean, I don't know if I want to lose that with some straggly graying man hair. I don't know.
I mean, if it makes you play like Lindsey Buckingham and this specific song that you apparently love, you never know. It might be worth it. Anyway, we'll let Hannah decide if she wants you to go full gray, growing it out.
She's not fussed. She'd like me to grow a big beard, in all honesty.
Okay. Well, I'll call her later and be like, Hannah, figure out how you make his hair go gray. We'll see. We'll do an official study to find out it affects Tim's guitar playing for the No Name Music Cast. And with that total 100% complete bit of science backed by some medical journals
And NASA.
that I don't know the name of right now. And NASA and the Department of Health and Human Services. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
To remind me of another day to